Welcome to Native Calgarian and Mossy for listening. I'm your host, Michelle Robinson, speaking to you in Mohkinstsis in the Blackfoot Confederacy, home of the Niitsitapi, Tsuut'ina Dene, and the Yiharhi Nakota. I talk about history, current news, unheard news, book clubs, with special guests to give local or national issues a voice through an urban Satu Dene lens. My life's work will be to honor the voices of my ancestors and next generation with humor, love, and truth. Reconciliation is work, not performance. May we honor all Indigenous voices with that courage. Today is June 6, 2025. Welcome to Native Calgarian Podcast. If you enjoy hearing Indigenous content by this Satu Dene woman, my Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for already showing your support. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. Also, giving a review helps whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. You can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And always remember to share the things you learned on your network, because people are still pretending like they know nothing. Anyway. Oki, nagana go, meko cheches to komaki, Dakots no go tinesiku. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson. I use they, them pronouns. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Great Bear Lake tribe in Treaty 11 in Delaney. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene nation is uninvited to this area of Clinchotine, Indahe, and Satu Dene, meaning many big dog town, named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born in Calgary, or in Blackfoot, Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name, which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. Acknowledging proximity to whiteness is important. The darker the skin, the more racism a person experiences in colonial spaces. My late great-grandfather is Milo Bewell from Delaney. His daughter, Alice, is my now late granny. My mother and I are Northern Slavey Dene, or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act and Post status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution. Having a Canadian Indian Act and status card is a colonial construct by Canadian policies meant to divide Indigenous peoples' inherent rights. Indigenous Two-Spirit, or the Indigenous 2S LGBTQ community, and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the Canadian socio-economic ladder. I think I'm going to start over. I don't know why I got bumped out of my own fucking thing here, so let's try this again. Today is June 6, 2025. Welcome to Native Calgarian Podcast. If you're enjoying hearing Indigenous content by this Satu Dene woman, my Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for already showing your support. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. Also, giving a review helps whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. You can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And always remember to share the things that you've learned to your network. Oki, naganago, meko cheches te komaki. Nera dago de kotsnago tene siku saradi. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use they, them pronouns. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Great Bear Lake tribe in Treaty 11 in Delaney. I'm native to Turtle Island, and my Dene nation is uninvited to this area of Clinchotine, Indahe, in Satu Dene, meaning many big dog town, named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born in Calgary, or in Blackfoot, Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. Acknowledging proximity to whiteness is important because the darker the skin, the more racism a person experiences in colonial spaces. My late great grandfather is Milo Bewell from Delaney. His daughter, Alice Paulus, is my now late granny. My mother and I are Northern Slavey Dene or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act and Post status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution. Having a Canadian Indian Act and Post status card is a colonial construct by Canadian policies meant to divide Indigenous peoples' inherent rights. Indigenous Two-Spirit or the Indigenous 2S LGBTQ community and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the Canadian economic ladder because of colonial trauma, imposed poverty, racism, gendered violence, and land theft. I am not a social worker nor an elder, nor do I speak on behalf of all Indigenous peoples, but I share my journey as a Dene mom navigating this ableist, fat-shaming, colonial, misogynistic, racist world in 2025. I think of all of this today, and I hope we honor the many Indigenous lives lost for the so-called country named Canada. I hope you see your role in the importance of stopping harm. As a citizen, your role in reconciliation as a treaty partner. Land Back is a movement that could save the planet from climate change created by colonialism. It would be a part of the treaty partnership, part of meaningful reconciliation and honoring global initiatives like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. As a former drafter, I'd love to teach you more, but you'll have to pay me. Go to nativecalgarian.com for more if you want to hear me speak even more than I do already on this podcast. So, this is the last podcast before the G7. I have a wonderful podcast coming up with a young woman who just won a massive scholarship, and I can't wait to air that one. But this will be the last one before the G7, so I think it's important that we have a quick conversation about that. If you are, one of the newer activists that have started activism in the last 5 years, this will be your first G7. This is my second G7, and I was really paying attention to the G20 in Toronto 10 years ago, or a while ago. Jesus, 20 years ago now. And the truth is that and at that time, I know the activists today would be in horror and have your pearls clutching over this, but at that time, there was no space to talk about in Indian residential schools. And before Alex Jones was big, and before Joe Rogan was big, this was when we first started to get like smartphones and stuff like that. So there was quite the like national and international activist group that we were for the first time really connecting. So this was about the time that the security certificates that were put together by the Martin and Jean Chrétien government was going on. And we were trying to raise awareness of like Mohammed Majob. He was one of the five that were in the security certificates. And CISA's had him under house arrest. Basically, they were considering him a terrorist, but it was a way to try to suspend any kind of Canadian rights that he might have. And it's a terrible story. There was a documentary at the time about the five that were under the security certificate. So Mohammed Majob stayed at my house, so I had to fill out all this paperwork for CSIS and stuff. Um, so anyway, this was before the commission too, right? The on Truth and Reconciliation. So a lot of the 9/11 truth movement, that was kind of our big thing. We were all talking about things like this at that time. And at the time, Dan Dix wasn't a, mean guy or anything, but today he's him and Alex Jones, they've all been infiltrated by the outside sources, so I don't follow them anymore. I don't consider them friends. But he put out a documentary called Into the Fire. I shared it for folks to see. The reason why it's so important for like we had this meeting, I'm going to talk about it in a minute, and like there were folks there, they just moved to Canada in the last 7 years, right? So they wouldn't know about this. They wouldn't know about how basically any Canadian rights you think you have, any charter rights you think you have, during any G20, G7, they don't exist. What is happening? And my Palestinian friends that are coming all around the world, and my existing ones that don't listen to me because I'm just a stupid native woman in their eyes. You know, um, I'm not, obviously, I'm just being sarcastic and tongue in cheek, but that bigger picture is that they don't see Canada for what it is yet, right? Like, but some of the folks who are at the encampment at the universities, they're starting to see how Canada actually works. And I think it's really important for you all to sit down and watch into the fire because you're going to see how, the Canadian military, the Canadian RCMP, the Calgary police, the Edmonton police, out there, it was like the Toronto police, it was the OPP, all of these organizations get together and with all of their big toys that all is tax funded, they're all excited to basically beat the shit and kill people. They're super excited about it, right? They're like, yeah, we're just gonna beat them up, blah, blah, blah. And who are we talking about? We're talking about church ladies who have like committees in their churches on social justice. We're talking about, new um, Canadians who care about Palestine and still have the illusion that police are somehow there for you. They don't see the whole who they underserve and over police stats yet. They're still trying to integrate into Canada. Whereas the older, grannies and older activists, they kind of know, but they still have a lot of white privilege, so they don't really get to feel the ugliness that natives have always felt from start. We had this meeting. I think it's really important that people understand the RCMP and one of the local activists. I know they're trying to do the right thing by giving the contact information and such, and I know I appreciated it. I appreciated knowing the who's who that's going to be kind of around more because I know if I'm in those spaces, it's going to be more observing than anything. And they're going to be like, you guys, this will be the very first rally. If you haven't been at your Palestinian rallies, if this is your first one that you're going to be at that's non-Palestinian, this is the first time you're going to see really the hate of all of those folks in uniform. You're going to see it. They're going to be there to show off to each other. It's going to be ugly. Your civil liberties are going to basically be suspended. They're already laying the groundwork out in the media, basically saying, if you see something, say something, already trying to demonize any demonstration, trying to say things like, well, as long as they're lawful and peaceful, then, it'll be fine. In other words, when they use violence, they're going to justify it in that way. So, like, until Canadians look with a little more of a critical lens at the media, but also at our policing, it's never going to change. And I know they won't. So at this moment, I'm going to give a plug in for No One to Tell, Breaking My Silence on the Life of the RCMP by Janet Marlowe. I have talked about her endlessly, I feel like, anyway. I don't know if anyone's actually read this book, but we've done in our book club a lot of books on Indigenous and the policing against us. What's going to happen, and you'll see it in the Into the Fire of the G20, basically, expect to be corralled, expect to be zip tied, expect to go into bullpens with no civil liberties. That's what's going to happen when the police choose to use their violence, because it's never the protesters. In fact, the purpose of this meeting was for them to basically do some data mining and be like, okay, so who are the local activists? Get our phone numbers. I'm sure they were in the parking lot getting our license plate numbers. I'm sure we all had our phones, so all those IP addresses of our phones, all of that stuff. Like that's what was happening. And I'm allowed to basically tell you all what happened in the hopes that if you I'm supposed to educate you on who the good guys are. None of them are good guys. All cops are bad. And I'm telling you that because even the well-meaning folks that were in that room with us, and the few cops that I do know, like I know damn well they have a mark on their back for working with people and not towing the broad line. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, No One to Tell by Janet Marlowe, this book will explain it in depth of how there is always the code, the bra code. You got to stand with the bras, that thin blue line means something. So that's why whenever I see that badge or anything, I know you're an immediate person to be afraid of and to avoid at all costs. But in this moment, I'm telling you, do not trust these folks. We're gonna have all these Palestinian protesters coming. These are the very people that train the Israeli soldiers. I know that the Palestinians say, "Oh my God, Israel soldiers are so bad." They're right; they are terrible. But we're the ones who train them to be that way. All of these tactics that have been used against you are what they use against us and always have for 150 years. The very policies that are in place today will be in place on Palestine in the future. I promise you. So be prepared, be ready for that. This is a place that if you twist your ankle, like you're going to have a friend you know in a safety vest doing that because if the cops get a chance, they'll break your leg. They will not give you any sort of aid, nothing. There will be full riot gear. There will be horses. There will be dogs. This is the place that's going to happen. So they have their designated areas for us. And I should probably stick to my notes a bit here, actually, and make sure I kind of cover what I think I know or what I was told that I could tell anyway. So, Simon Jamal is a local activist here in Calgary, and she's still working with the police in some capacity. I'm not, but I knew a lot of the folks that were in that room. And there was another cop that they're like, yeah, let's get together and let's have a conversation. And it was adorable. Love this guy. He's a sweet cop, but fuck, he brutal ruined the land acknowledgement. And because no one in that room other than me knew, the words Pagani Gainai, like no idea how badly he butchered it. So it was like the first inside giggle I had during the start of this. They did their politician speak about, we want trust, we want partnership, we want to understand why the mistrust. So, that's how they're introducing themselves. There's a lot of nice city things said. Give us an opportunity to change the relationships. This is all bullshit. They're not doing that for any other reason than they wanted to data mine us and know who's who for the G7. They don't really give a shit about us. They never will, never, never. If they did, because I know there's some cops and some cop lovers that are like, oh my God, we love the police. Here's the thing. Janet Marlowe, this book is, I don't know, 10 years old. How many reports do we have? Follow Bridget Tolley on Facebook. She was one of my first mentors that brought piles and piles and piles of reports to show all of the, you know, attempts of recommendations for police, whether at a local level, provincial, territorial level, or national level, the things they can do. This is pre-TRC. This is pre-national inquiry. They are choosing to be jerks. They are choosing to never improve a G20, G7, now our G7. They are choosing to do that. So never trust a cop. And for the ones who think they're good ones, which there may very well be, again, they have a black mark on their back and they are going to be put into positions that are actually dangerous. We do all know this is a dangerous job, but they will be put in the actual position to be killed on their own, which is what we've seen out in Nova Scotia when they had that one guy who was shooting and pretending to be a cop and shooting and killing everyone. Those are the type of people that they kill. It's a real shame that people don't understand this, but I know you don't read about policing like I do. You don't follow the very, MPs trying to fight this, the senators trying to fight this, the books written, right? Like you have to start doing that. If you are serious about improving this stupid country, at least have your talking points about what they're supposed to do. Because every one of them cramp up because, it's really easy for them just to beat the crap out of you. It's really easy for them to kill you, but they don't know what to do when you say words to them. They get all scared. They might block you on Facebook or they might block you on socials, but they really don't want to have a fulsome discussion on your civil liberties, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I'm getting off point here. So, There's some names here. I just don't think it'll matter to you. Um, what will matter is that there was one cop. He was with the RCMP division, DLT. He was the liaison, fully decked out and like in full tactical. He said, "This is what we're going to look like at the G7." And he said, "Folks like me, the liaisons, we're going to be wearing this gray shirt." And so to them, they think this is relationship building. So this guy, he introduced his other two police officers that are going to be there. If you like are in my world, I'll share their names and sex with you. Um, and they're the really the only people who are going to be we're going to be interacting with. There's going to be people out of Banff, but I have no intention of going there. I don't know who is going to go there, but they're under this guy that was in full tactical gear. So I have his number. So if something's going out in Banff and you need to get a hold of this guy who knows who's going to be in charge of the police out there. Now, they want us to tell them about the reason why we exchange numbers is that, in case there's a troublemaker. So we were always making up the, agitator from outside. So the international person, the person from the States that's coming and such. And they were always trying to frame it in that way. Not me. When I got a chance to speak, I said, look, that guy's boots. Those are the boots that you're going to look out for that are going to be the agitators. There's something called an agent provocateur. They're paid by the system here to cause trouble so that the system with all of their bra outfits can all like beat the crap out of us. So and detain us and put us in zip ties and put us in the cattle areas basically. So I said that's what you got to look for. And so I didn't get the chance to say this because you only had a second or two to talk in front of everybody. It is important if you are going to be a protester at any of these events that we're coming up to that you videotape these folks because that's what and I'm just going to give a shout out to Dan Dix even though we're not the besties anymore that we used to be. He has a whole video showing who was there and what happened. And so if you take those videos and we collectively figure out where we're going to keep our data and show it in our way, like we'll be able to showcase who these people are. We'll figure it out. It'll take time. Anyway, for folks who are still good doers and actually believe in the police, if you send this to them, you text the, picture or the video of that person to them, one, they'll know if their inside agent just got caught, but two, they won't do anything, right? Or they'll look into it 4 years from now. Like they won't care. So I'm not saying don't do it. I mean, I was sending them all of the hate messages I got for a while, just in case, knowing they don't reply back, they don't care, they would never do anything about it, right? So I just kind of quit caring at a certain point and just quit sending them, you know, verifiable profiles and such. Those days are done for me, but for folks who still believe the police can change, that's my take on what I would say to you about what to expect. Um, so yeah, it was just really us encouraging that. Okay, this was kind of funny. So about the designated areas. So there's going to be the one at City Hall, one at Victoria, and then there's one at McKnight where the planes are going to be. Um, and this is funny. They were like, the reason why we did this is so that we have safe places for you all to exercise your charter of rights and freedoms. And we are support lawful, peaceful marches. And I kind of laughed because I'm like, that's a nice way of framing it so that way when there's violence, you can say, well, they weren't being lawful or peaceful. But whatever. They also tried to say that, we'll have porta potties there and, the motorcades will be there to protect you. Not corral you. No, 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 you're not chattel. Um, one of the activists was so sweet. He's like, there's no charter in England, but a lot of the new police come here with their English accents and they need to understand the Canadian charter. I thought that was adorable because I know there's no charter rights, even though the police will tell you so. And your MPs and your MLAs, they'll tell you, oh, yes, you do. But anyone who's ever studied these types of protests know that basically all of your rights are going to be suspended. And they're not, what they're going to do is zip tie you, not charge you with anything, but disrupt your life for enough long, like during the G7, so that you can't impact anything, and then let you go without any charges. And there might be a class action, but we'll see. We'll see how they do. Um, so one of the cops was like, we're just worried about protests on the street, and brought up that horrible tragedy in Vancouver. And so they're trying to encourage us all to stay off the streets. And they have regrets about the convoy and how maybe they should have shut that down sooner, because that was impacting other people's charter of rights and freedoms. So they've learned a lot from the convoy. Now you all know I don't believe that for a second. You had white supremacists protecting white supremacists. That's what it was. If the convoy decided to go march today, their rights would be protected against, and bigotry would be protected every time. But they tried to say that they care about everybody's beliefs. They just police behavior. That's their way, that's their talking point of justifying police violence against us. Well-meaning newer Canadians spoke up, hijab-wearing women, just talking about the lack of compassion that they've seen from the police at the Palestinian protests and the encampment. And the cops, they're victim blaming. They're like, well, communication goes both ways, um, without any concept of the power dynamic at all. They did say that the airport themselves is private property, and they were the ones that wanted a designated area so that people wouldn't come into the airport area. I can tell you from the last G7 that came, I guess 20 years ago, it was kind of cool to see those planes, because I went to the air strip a lot, because they had, like, you have Air Force One, and then you have the double, so you have two Air Force Ones, and then China, like all of these countries had two planes. So it was kind of cool to see that, and them come land. The other day, I actually seen a Hercules land at the Calgary airport. I don't know if it was for the G7 or for the fires, but either or. It was interesting because I posted that, and then I seen Robert Falcon-Ouellette. He posted the same thing, but it was directly tied, obviously, to the fires that were happening up in Manitoba. So that was kind of interesting that two nerds totally knew that. Now, to be fair, he actually works for the military now. I'm just a nerd who grew up in Sylvan Lake, and Dad was nuts about planes and trains and World War II. So we went to the Penhold Air Show every year when they used to have those before the insurance company shut it down. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, as I do with my ADHD. I've already said expect all riot gear, dogs, horses, and shields. We have one thoughtful new Canadian who is a Palestinian organizer, and he spoke up and he said that the G7 will go away, but your police behavior will decide the future. And I thought that was really sweet of him to say. His point was how incredibly hostile the police, Calgary police, have been towards us. But, again, he's newer here, and I didn't get a chance to tell him this. But at the end of the day, the Calgary police, the Edmonton police, the RCMP, the Canadian military, like all of these organizations who are trying to, like, chest pump each other, they're all going to be here, and he doesn't recognize his civil liberties are totally going to be gone. So he was worried about, if there's hostility, you guys have to account to us. And it's like, man, this is so much bigger. There's going to be international protesters, international agent provocateurs. Like, honestly, because all of the information coming from the international student movement is all based on around Palestine. Again, the Canadian military and policing forces all train with Israelis. I have no doubt it'll be an Israeli agitator that comes in and creates the violence so that they can just beat the shit out of all of us, specifically anyone wearing a keffiyeh, anyone who's for Palestine. Like it, because they get to beat them up in Palestine or they get to beat them up here. Like they just hate Palestinians. Like there's no nice way to say it. So I'm hoping that I'm wrong. Fuck, I hope I'm wrong. There was this one young Palestinian, and she just fucking called them out. They're like, this is all fluff. And she just kept saying it. And she was fucking right, first and foremost. Because like they were all there wondering, how are you guys accountable for all the stuff you've done up to this moment? And of course, they will never be accountable. Like, Eve the chief wasn't there, nobody was there. Um, and she called it out. They're like, all you've ever done is fear tactics against us. You never, all the people in this room will never show up when it actually matters. And that's fucking true. And I can say that as a native telling you how many times the police have said, no, we're trying to do new relations. And they never fucking do. Never. It's like, hey, I'll give you a really specific one. There was a indigenous woman who was a Nook. she Her family like contacted me. And there was this white queer activist that I'm still trying to get along with here. And she took up doing a vigil and memorial, purposely excluding me and all the other natives. Like that, she thought she was totally in the right to do that. So anyway, I was trying to work behind the scenes with the family saying, hey, this is her name. But there was a whole bunch of shit going on behind the scenes at the police. And they buried this woman and put the wrong name on her. And it was just a fucking gong show. This was us, years of us working together, and it's all bullshit. So anyway, this Palestinian supporter, this young one, she was just like, you are all blaming the victim. And that was really the language throughout the entire meeting, was them basically saying all the responsibility is on us, right? Never acknowledging any of their crap. There's this black CPS officer, Calgary Police Service officer. He's going to be with the G7. He's former diversity. I have literally trained him. He tried to have a sidebar conversation with me and tell me all the good things they've done with the South Sudanese. Like I wasn't there working with 12 Community Safety Initiative at the time that was going down. I literally gave him Indigenous training, which he never recognized me. He didn't give a shit. Like he never, said anything about the land acknowledgement. Like this guy does not give a flying fuck about Indigenous people and our goddamn rights, but really tried to do the diplomatic. Oh, I'm talking to an activist and I'm a nice guy. Here's my political talking points. Bullshit. So, he's going to be at the front line. And so I'm like, great. So here's another guy who doesn't, care about nothing. He tried to share like the same story I've heard actually. And I kind of threw it back in his face and said, oh, what happens here in District 4 in the Greater Forest Lawn area every single day to Indigenous youth? You know, I don't think he appreciated me. Um, anyway, other folks spoke up saying, when we genuinely engage with the police, we get targeted. And that's 100% true. So she was trying to find role clarification, but like I know their role, they know their role. Their role is to back the blue every fucking time. It doesn't matter. So, oh, we have this. I actually, her and I never got along because, 20 years ago, she was with the NDP camp and I was with the Liberal camp, and we just we did not like each other. So anyway, she spoke up and she fucking nailed it. She talked about how and I have a lot of respect for what she has gone through with these Palestinian protests. She's been hospitalized by the Calgary police violence at the encampment. Um, and somebody outright said it, like, you have to understand the people in this room have had your tear gas, they've had your rubber bullets and have been hospitalized by your violence. And this person who spoke up was one of them. And she said, you are constantly undermining our rights in the media with your David Hall spokesperson. There's very intimidating weapons. You're criminalizing the protest. I've spoken before about ISSG being like this, group of security, like all of the Canadian military policing, etc. Um, and she said, "Are you consulting with civil rights lawyers? Why should we trust you after all of the UFC police violence?" She gave a wonderful example of when Mark Neufeld was in the media saying, "Oh no, we didn't hear anything about violence and nobody reported that to us." She took the time to do that. And the person who took that was a condescending prick, not surprising. And she never heard anything back about that, about the police intimidating her. And so, like these G7 guys who aren't Calgary police, were kind of hearing about some of this for the first time. And it's like, should have guessed. Your own bros couldn't give you a little bit of a debrief beforehand. Jesus. So anyway, we talked about that, and I'm just going to say it like right now, today, if you read any of the media, they are absolutely being manipulated so that those talking points will be weaponized against us. And I hope you're getting that from what I'm saying right now. Um, the folks that are going to be out at Banff, again, we can give you that contact. These guys were sadly proud that they worked with the convoy folks that camped outside and had like structure just outside a city here on the way to Banff. I don't know, man. Well, this really strong young Palestinian, she just outright said Hamas is not a terrorist group. They are a resistance fighter group. And that at least got a rounding about amount of applause from folks there. They sure didn't back me, but anyway, the whole idea of this meeting was supposed to be that we create a plan together, that we give them things that they have to do. And the truth is, there wasn't really much that because they have no accountability for all the violence they've done up against us up until this moment. So some folks talked about we still want that accountability. We want the transparency, especially at the university, the $3,000 tickets to be forgiven. I talked about how Wessam still has his charges stayed instead of eliminated. We talked about wanting a meeting with the chief. And Simon, she spoke up and said, can we just tell the police to have some manners and speak with us with manners? I thought that was a really nice request, and I know they won't because it's the G7. They won't. Um, a lot of the Palestinian movement groups here in Calgary, they already have marshals to help people. So that was one of the requests from the police, and we all kind of like, that's already been done, and you guys aren't already working with the marshals that are there. So it was a lot about role clarification, but we all know the police won't help us and won't do any changes. So, one person said, can civil liberties groups be brought on to observe the whole thing, which I thought was a great request. I just know they won't do it. So I do have some contacts. If you are coming to Calgary and you want to know who's who, then great. But if you're just a person in fucking Toronto, like I just don't care unless we have a different conversation. And you're not like if you're not coming here, I'm not going to give you this information. So anyway, I just my husband reminded me to say under no circumstances do you consider this legal advice. This entire podcast and all previous podcasts and the next podcast because one, I'm not a lawyer. One, I'm not a legal assistant. I have no training in that, but I'm just telling you my experience as an activist. Um, you know, uh, when this happens, if there is violence, when there's violence and they, zip tie us and put us in bullpens, um, like our civil liberties will be absolutely suspended. The chance of us being able to talk to a lawyer will be zilch, like zero. So don't provide statements to the police until you have a chance to have a lawyer. That's the only thing. And I mean, this won't be on the G7. This will be the week after kind of thing. So, that's the best advice I can give to everybody. And, have your first aid kits and just be prepared to walk a lot. It It'll be different because there will be international protesters coming, ones that we've never heard of, ones that like international media. There will be lots of international media that'll be there as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it all goes down. And I hope everybody stays safe and I hope there's no violence. There almost always is at these events, though. I did want to say, I want to mention Splitting the Sky. So for folks who don't know who that is, his name is Jon Boncore. And Attica prison off of New York there. What is that? Staten Island. There was a major takeover and revolt, and he was a part of that. And he was a just a hell of an activist all around North America. And, he talked about 9/11 being an inside job as well. And back in those days when we were protesting, I know it sounds crazy compared to Trump, but like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, like monsters, utter and complete monsters. And we were trying to raise awareness against all of the military action happening in the Middle East. And even at that time, the families of 9/11 were asking for reports of like a commission kind of thing. And the one they gave them, we all called Swiss cheese. It was so full of holes. So the families have never had full transparency on that. And for me, the big thing was there was this book that was put out and it talked about all of the financial transactions that happened on September 10th, 2021 or 2001, the day before 9/11. And I was just like, they knew. So that was my like this the, there were enough people who knew that it was like, this was not necessary, the amount of death and that, and it will never fully come out all of the stuff that happened from that. But I do know 9/11 was used as the catalyst for this moment right now where Palestinians are under a genocide. And the international community who has supported this up to this moment look like a bunch of genocidal maniacs, and they are. But that bigger picture, too, is that, this is why we have to protest the G7 is because these G7 countries are the ones that are killing indigenous people globally, that are killing the earth, like climate change. Hey, shout out to Greta Thunberg. She's on a flotilla right now on her way to Palestine. I'm sure if she could be in Calgary and in Banff to protest the G7, she would, but she's rightfully putting her eyes on Palestine and trying to bring international awareness to the issue. I think people are starting to get it, but hats off to Ireland, South Africa for not putting up with this bullshit and nonsense and taking them to the international justice courts. I mean, it was Simon Jamal that helped educate me on that 15 years ago. I remember when the 2014 attacks had happened and we were all speaking out then about it. We just never thought this day would happen where, like, right now, there are thousands of Palestinians starving to death, babies starving to death. And thanks to colonialism, be happy to know that there are lots of, land sellers, real estate agents making a lot of money right now with new settlements going into Palestine. Obviously, you all know Trump is super excited to own the West Bank. It's disgusting. I don't know. I know I'm speaking to the choir, but like for Canadians and for the demographic of people that listen to me, I just want to say, like, you have to understand what is happening right now in Palestine is exactly what you did to us in the 1900s. And the policies that are still in effect today against our people creating the genocide, those are the same policies you're going to see it. Tell your kids in 50 years, those are the same policies that'll be used against Palestinians. Why? Settler colonialism. So if you don't understand, like if you haven't read the books that I've told you to read, if you haven't listened to the videos, the words, the other indigenous content creators, like I don't know if you're ever going to get it. I hope this is the one moment you get it, but I don't know if that'll happen in my lifetime. Um, I had the 11 Fox Walk went ahead, and because of the G7, every family member and community member that showed up was outnumbered, at least by two with police. And for a lot of our white settlers who are for the first time showing up to our events, they were texting me or calling me, telling me how shocked they were. And I'm like, when Colin Crowshoe passed away, um, right in my neighborhood, and the family tried to have the vigil and on the community association locked them out. So we had it on the main lawn. And the community association obviously was working with the police, and the police completely surrounded us. The Hawks helicopter was over top of us, and these were elders who had no access to the washroom. We had the vigil for Colton, and the police were terrible about it. And this was in what, 2013. So for the new activists that have been doing this kind of newer, like this has been the reality for over 150 years. Them shooting and killing us, like it was adorable. The Palestinians were like, the amount of force you're using, I'm like, they have the authorization to kill you and get away with it because they do it every day here for against Indigenous people. But I don't know why Canadians aren't getting that. So anyway, I just wanted to give another shout out to 11 Fox's family who had double the amount of police presence following them the entire time. It's horrible. And I do hope that they get some sort of justice. I just unfortunately have no faith in our injustice system to give them that. Today I'm wearing a blue jean jacket, and I'm doing that because a good friend of mine, Stephanie Harp, up in Edmonton, she's been also trying to work with the police, and they created this day to try to honor and raise awareness about the missing and murdered Indigenous men and boys and Two Spirit. Because I talk about oppression in my opening statement every time, and I think it goes in one ear and out the other for a lot of Canadians. They don't understand the oppression and the amount of our people who are killed every single day. And so anyway, today we wear a blue jean jacket, and they started this up in Edmonton in 2023. So this will be the second anniversary of it. And yeah, I shared it. Few folks seen it. So if you're wearing a jean jacket today, thank you. It's a good day. The measles outbreak is happening. Yuck. And Alberta's leading the charge because we're winning. On Monday is our book club, Kent Monkman's book club. And I'm going to give a shout out to Art of the Medicine Line by Tony Reeves, which will be November's, because that will talk about how the border between the US and Canada was created for those actually interested in learning about that rather than the stupid rhetoric coming from the gals down south who are in the middle of a breakup. Well, it's entertaining. Ultimately, there is a genocide happening in Palestine, and I I'm just tired of their bullshit. Anyway, Reconciliation Action Group, if you're local, please join us. I really do wish a lot of the Palestinian supporters would, do the work. Read the 94 calls to action, read the 231 calls to justice. If you were to read the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, you'd see a lot of similarities. I've been talking about the National Indigenous Economic Strategy for a long time, our Treaty Right to Health done by that document. Like, we bring solutions. It's just a sad reality that Canadians, Albertans, Calgarians, municipalities across the country, provincial and territorial governments, none of these order of governments are doing meaningful change on any of these things. And, this is where we're at. So if you legitimately care, know the issues so that you can start calling out these issues. Anyway, Masi Cho to my ancestors, to my granny, my mom of what strength looks like through your example. want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt, my stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is for her Austrian family and roots and stepping up to teach me how to be a proud Calgarian. It's through her. I'm a second generation Calgarian. For folks who don't know why we call this Native Calgarian podcast, it's because if you're not Native and you call yourself a Native Calgarian, I want to basically punch you in the face and ask you what nation you come from. So, so a way to try to bring it back. Anyway, I want to say thank you to my husband. He has produced and edited this show. He was the one who encouraged me to have it. He's my husband, childhood friend, and my support down this decades of witnessing racism, sexism, ableism to our child who's about to graduate. We are proud of you. We are proud that you chose us and that we get to learn from you daily. You give me daily accountability to be the best person I can be. And I just hope my family will be proud of me trying to discuss these things that are happening today in Calgary, um, so that they can be proud that we tried. We tried to raise awareness. I honor the Blackfoot as the elders and members have been so kind to me on my journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Blackfoot. Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Satu Dene. And my humblest apologies to the elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for already showing your support. If you value listening and watching and can afford to give, thank you. To those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. I also have a YouTube channel. You can go and subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And the last thing I want to talk about, that's supposed to just be funny. Um, if you're on TikTok, you get to see some of my reshares. And oh my God, I love TikTok so much. It's so much fun to see other people like make fun of certain things. So I wanted to tell you, I hate AI. I try to block all AI accounts immediately as soon as I figure out they're AI. They got me. There's a few new accounts that pretend to be Bigfoot, that pretend to be little people, and they're just constantly making content that's so funny. And so those are my new favorite things. I don't know if I share them so much, but whoever's making those are that they're killing it. But anyway, I always end by giving side eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not tradish. My beautiful cousin responded, "Are you being my dish?" Thank you folks for listening.